This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Heather Sells. New numbers show some positive signs in the fight against COVID-19. By the end of today, it is estimated that 10% of Americans will have had at least one dose of the vaccine, and we are already seeing a downward trend in cases of the virus. Caitlin Burke has our report.
Vaccine distribution is ramping up across the country, and COVID infection rates are already dropping significantly. The doctor in charge of the U.S. fight against the virus says things will only get better as more vaccines are available in the coming weeks.
Even though there's a clear discrepancy between the demand and the supply, that will get better as we get through February and into March.
According to a Health and Human Services document obtained by ABC News, there's been a 4-week downward trend in reported COVID cases, which has resulted in a 50% drop in infections since the peak on January 8th. The country is also reporting fewer than 100,000 daily cases for the first time since November. When it comes to vaccines, Pfizer says it's speeding up production, cutting the time it takes to make a batch from 110 days to just 60. And Johnson & Johnson is making its single-dose vaccine while waiting on its emergency use authorization. Still, health officials warn Americans to stay vigilant. South Africa has suspended use of AstraZeneca's vaccine after data showed it gives only minimal protection against mild to moderate sickness caused by the South African variant of the virus. And in the U.S., a new study, not yet peer-reviewed, suggests cases of the highly contagious UK variant may be doubling every 10 days.
It does show that we have likely more of the variants floating around in our population. That could explain why we may still see some more surges in the future.
The NFL has offered up 30 stadiums to be used as mass vaccination sites. Those efforts, however, dependent on having enough available doses of the vaccine. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Thanks, Caitlin. And CBN News medical reporter Lori Johnson is here with us now. Lori, give us some perspective here. The fact that the cases are beginning to go down and the vaccines are ramping up, is this potentially the beginning of the end?
Well, you know, Heather, it would be, and I would love to say that, yes, this is the beginning of the end, but health experts are very concerned about these variants that are lying out there. And if we don't continue to take these mitigation efforts and continue to vaccinate as soon as possible, there is a chance that these variants are going to cause huge surges in cases, hospitalizations, and deaths.
Okay, I know you've been watching two of them in particular. Tell us about those and what we should be watching for.
Well, there are two main variants, the UK variant and the South African variant. The UK variant is very prevalent in the United States right now and is expected to be the dominant strain next month. It's between 35 and 45% more contagious, more transmissible. So just by that fact alone, that we could see more cases, more hospitalizations, and more deaths. So we need to really be careful about the UK variant, although the South African variant is considered to be much more concerning. It's not as prevalent in the United States, but the bad thing about that is that it has been shown to evade vaccines and treatments. So it has been able to escape and resist vaccines to some degree and also some treatments. So this is the one that health experts are really keeping an eye on.
Absolutely. And I want to ask you, too, I know a lot of us have friends, family who have either had the vaccine or who've had the virus, so their immunity is somewhat strengthened. How much do we know about how many people have had the virus and survived, and how safe do these two groups keep, all of us?
Well, it's a great question. And so we know that immunity can be achieved in one of two ways, recovering from the virus or getting vaccinated. And it's estimated that about 20% of the entire United States population is in one of those two groups. We know about 40 million people have already received at least one shot, one vaccination, and that there are still others who have recovered from coronavirus ever since it began about a year ago. But the big question mark is, once you recovered from the coronavirus, How long does that immunity last and how strong is it? We do know that we need about 75% of the population to have some form of immunity to achieve herd immunity, which is what it's going to take for us to get back to normal, Heather.
All right. And it sounds like if you have had the virus that you still should consider the vaccine. Is that correct?
That's right. Health experts are saying go ahead and get vaccinated, but you might want to wait at least 6 weeks or 8 weeks after you've recovered. And also, it might be courteous if you have believed to have some form of immunity to let people who have no immunity whatsoever to go ahead of you in line.
Okay, sounds good. Lori Johnson, thanks for your insights.
Sure.
Well, in Washington, Democrats are moving a $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill through the House, which could give Americans another $1,400 stimulus check. They also want to send millions of American families up to $3,600 per year for every child under the age of 6. If they make under $75,000 a year as an individual, or less than $150,000 a year as a couple. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says it's needed because many people are still hurting.
We need a package that's big enough to address this full range of needs.
Republicans say the proposed stimulus would balloon the federal budget at a time when the economy is actually recovering.
It's not an economy in collapse the way it was in March. It's not the right solution.
In other news, Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot may have a preliminary agreement with the teachers union on COVID safety protocols. It could potentially halt a strike in the nation's third largest school district. The potential agreement includes vaccinations for teachers and staff and must be approved by the union. If approved, some students could return to class as soon as Thursday. The news comes amid a nationwide debate over whether keeping schools closed is doing more harm than good for children. Well, tomorrow, former President Trump's second impeachment trial is set to begin in the Senate. Both sides are hoping to finish it up quickly. Democrats want to get on with approving President Biden's nominees and passing legislation on his 100-day agenda, as well as holding the trial. But many Republicans are calling it unconstitutional and a waste of time.
The president was taking steps to make it worse, not better. We're going to do our constitutional responsibility and hold a trial.
45 plus Republicans are going to vote early on that it's unconstitutional. It's not a question of how the trial ends. It's a question of when it ends.
So far, it appears few witnesses will appear. The president turned down a Democratic request to testify under oath. An American Girl doll faces a boycott by the Christian conservative organization 1 Million Moms. So far, 20,000 people have signed the petition. It is asking the toy maker Mattel to remain neutral in America's culture war and not include an LGBT element in the storyline for its Doll of the Year, 10-year-old Kira Bailey. The doll's story of adventures in Australia and love for wildlife includes the backstory of her visiting same-sex married aunts. Coming up, winter weather piles on the snow across the nation and set some deadly records. We will talk with meteorologist Joe Bastardi about how it might play out.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Extreme cold weather bringing snow and ice across much of the nation. Take a look at this. An avalanche just about buries snowmobilers in Utah. 15 people have died in avalanches since February 1st, making it the deadliest week for them since 1910. Experts say a dry fall made for a weak base that can't hold the weight of all the snow, making conditions perfect for triggering avalanches. The bitter weather in the north and Midwest is creating negative temperatures there right now. It is also dipping south and moving to the northeast. And meteorologist Joe Bastardi with weatherbell.com joins us now with a scoop on this wild weather we are seeing. Welcome, Joe.
Well, it's funny that you bring wild weather up because I coined a term last week, wild weather entertainment, the WWE, and the tag team of Snowmageddon and Coldmageddon that was developing across the United States. It's almost like, I used to wrestle in college and all that stuff. And this is, folks, let me just say something. The situation in Utah with the avalanche, you have to pay attention to what's going on when the weather gets extreme. When it comes to heat, a lot of times you go outside and you say, hey, it's hot out, I better get back in, right? But the cold can kill you and hurt you much quicker. Cold kills a lot more than warmth does. And it's just, hearing something like that sort of just takes the wind out of my sails as far as trying to explain what's going on to people.
Yeah, really concerning. I do want to ask you about this system that we're seeing. How massive is it, Joe? We're seeing snow blankets, large section of the nation right now.
It's several systems, and this is something, you see, we're on a snapshot over here. This movie has started to play back in the middle of January. This whole thing started and has evolved to this. So you're getting one storm after another that's coming. It's a handoff pattern from the west to the east. All these storms run from the southern plains to the mid-Atlantic coast. To the north, there's very cold air, so it snows. And the problem we have now is there's going to be repetitive storms this week, maybe not that strong. And then the weekend, there could be a blizzard in the northeast, followed next week by another storm coming right on its tail. And while this is going on, it's just getting colder and colder and colder. A big key to this is paying attention. And, I'm biased toward the weather because this is all I've ever wanted to do. It's what God made me to do. But folks say, hey, where did this come from? Is this the worst ever? I'll tell you what, for February, this is going to be about as extreme as you're ever going to see. And it's not only here, it's over in the UK. Milan, Italy, may get 1 foot to 2 feet of snow over the next 10 days, too. And it has to do with the way this pattern has evolved over the last month. So this movie, now you're walking into the middle of the movie, and there's some wild things going on the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, we'll talk about the end of the movie, Joe. How long should we expect this extreme weather to play out? Are we talking days or weeks, or what are we looking at?
Well, what happens is you had a major stratospheric warming event. And when that happens, I want to explain this to folks. When the stratosphere expands, the tropopause compacts. That means high pressure develops across Canada. And when we research these, for instance, you had one in 2009, 2010, they generally last 30 to 60 days. I punched the clock on January 15th, so this is going to last the rest of the month. It may not be quite as extreme, excuse me, at the end of the month and into March, and then suddenly it'll flip. You watch what happens. It'll be like, whoa, how'd that just all disappear, especially in the south and east? But if you look at the history of these things, and there is definitely a history to it, If you start January 15th, it's through the month of February and into early March that we have to deal with this type of stuff.
All right. Well, I know we're ready for the flip right now. Does this look like it's going to be a winter that goes down in the record books?
Well, February will, but let's remember that overall, January and December were warmer than normal. We had a great, fantastic snowstorm in Texas. To see them get that in January. And of course, the Northeast had the big storm in December, but the rest of the winter has been relatively mild across the United States. As when we put out our winter forecast, we said it's going to be like a roller coaster ride. You'll wind up on the platform again, which is the winter will average out near average as far as temperatures go. But the way you got there is just a wild ride with all these twists and turns. And right now, we're seeing the cold and the snow trying to balance out the previous warmth. This does happen. The winter of 06-07, we had the coldest February on record in the Midwest after a warm January and December. So you see this happen every once in a while.
All right, very good. Joe Bastardi with weatherbell.com. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Still ahead, conspiracy theories in the church, how they get going, and how believers can respond.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
A new study on conspiracy theories from Lifeway shows that close to half of U.S. Protestant pastors hear these theories in their churches. These pastors say they frequently hear members of their congregations repeating theories about why something is happening in our country. And joining us now to discuss is Dan Darling. He's the Senior Vice President of Communications for the National Religious Broadcasters Association, and he also recently wrote a book on social media called Away with Words. Dan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Heather. I appreciate that.
So really interesting, this Lifeway research that's coming out. And we know, of course, that conspiracy theories explain events or circumstances as the result of a secret plot, usually by powerful conspirators. Why do you think we're finding this so widely spread in the church?
Well, I think there's a few reasons for this. I think, number one, there's widespread distrust in institutions across the board, and there's always going to be conspiracy theories, but whenever there's widespread distrust, those rise, that our institutions across the board have failed us, and so people are grasping for how to explain it, how to think through it. I think the other, another factor is the fact that information is so widespread that we're daily being deluged with information on social media, on our phones, across, different networks and different sources, different inputs. And I think the third reason is that we don't have a really good understanding for how to read the news, how to process the news as Christians, that we tend to be sorting into our own tribes where we only hear news that confirms our opinion or tells us what we want to believe about somebody we disagree with. And so those information silos have kept us kind of not reading a broad variety of perspectives, and therefore we're susceptible to hearing conspiracy theories and untruth.
Right. So interesting how all these forces are coming together right now. When you think about this being so prevalent in the church, what does it mean for the church? I mean, how does it affect how we grow in Christ, you know, as members of the body of Christ and our witness?
I think it means a lot. I think there's a few things to think about. I think, first of all, we have to understand that as Christians, we should care about truth. Jesus said, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life." We are people of the truth. And if we are, that means we need to prioritize what is true over what we want to be true, over things that are sensational that maybe make other people that we disagree with look poorly. I think the second thing we really need to have a conversation about that's at the root of this is that we are allowing a lot of stuff into our minds every day. You know, when I was a kid, my parents rightly warned me about the pervasive influence of pop culture and to really watch what goes into your minds. And I think we have to have that same conversation about our political content, that we need to watch what goes into our minds, that we're not unintentionally catechizing ourselves toward untruth, toward heresy, toward lies, instead of really reinvigorating ourselves with the spiritual disciplines and the way of Christ.
Well, Dan Darling with the National Religious Broadcasters, thanks for your time.
Well, thank you for having me.
Coming up next, we talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' big Super Bowl win, one inspiring ad during the game, and who's won the NFL's Man of the Year. Stay with us.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5, Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
The Super Bowl may be over, but fans are still talking about that game and the stories around it. CBN sports anchor and director Sean Brown joins us now to wrap it all up. Welcome, Sean. I was saying to you earlier, I appreciate more than ever the opportunity to talk about sports right now.
Yes. Hi, Heather. How are you?
Good. Well, of course, the Tampa Bay pulled it out last night, 31-9 over the Kansas City Chiefs. Not a close game. What happened in your view?
Well, look, last week I said that this was going to be a high-scoring game. Well, it was for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who knew? NFL Network, ESPN, me, who knew that this was going to be a blowout and that defense, Tampa Bay Buccaneer defense, was going to keep the Kansas City Chiefs out of the end zone the entire game. I mean, we're talking 3 field goals, and that was it. Their offense was really a no factor moving the ball down the field into the end zone. I didn't say it. NFL didn't say it. ESPN didn't say it. This will go down in history as one of them, a very, very popular Super Bowl, simply because it just didn't go the way we all thought it was going to go.
And really kudos to the defense there. I want to ask you, too, about Tom Brady, 7th Super Bowl win. He's the game MVP. He's 43. What is the secret sauce here?
You know what? When a guy switches teams, he was already the GOAT. We already arguably was the greatest of all time. He goes to Tampa Bay. He has to get with Bruce Arians, the head coach, get together with the offensive coordinator and Byron Leftwich. They all have to meet, check their attitudes at the door, and figure out what's going to be the recipe to move this team to a championship. And he was able to do it. He was able to go there, have everyone buy into what he was talking about, his theory, in agreement with the head coach, in agreement with the offensive coordinator. That's what champions do. He checked his ego at the door and said, what do you want? Here's what I can bring. And they were able to work it out. And now Tampa Bay has their 2nd Super Bowl championship in franchise history. Of course, Brady has 7 more than any other franchise in the league.
Well, really phenomenal that he can take that kind of winning attitude and create a new culture, if you will, where he goes, and that he can beat his age, if you will. Is there any physical tricks? From what I understand, he works out like crazy, et cetera, et cetera.
You know what, Heather? It's bizarre. It's like the guy's 42. He knows how to play. He plays really, really smart. You don't see him, running down the field. He plays really smart. He studies the defense. He knows exactly where he wants to go with the ball for every single play. And he has all of his receivers and tight ends and backs ready and say, look, this is where I'm going with the ball. I need you to be there. And somehow he's able to motivate them to do it. It's highly impressive. He is definitely the greatest of all time, simply because of that.
Right. Well, tell us about Russell Wilson. He's the Seattle Seahawks quarterback who won the Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year. What's the story behind that award?
First of all, who doesn't love Russell Wilson? Okay. I mean, the guy's, since he came into the league, I think he said during the award speech he gave, he said that as soon as he came into the league, he immediately went over to the hospital and said, hey, look, how can I volunteer? I'm Russell Wilson, the quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks. And they were like, well, who are you again? So in his heart, he was already conditioned to serve. And he also talked about his father, who said that, hey, you can make a difference. If not you, why not you? Why not you? And it just goes to show that, look, man, whatever I've been given, I have a responsibility to share love with the world. Yes, I can be great on the field, but I can also be great off of the field and make a difference in the world. And that's exactly who he is, and that's what he's been doing. Well deserved. Well deserved.
Very cool. All right, and I want to ask you, too, about the Toyota ad that a lot of people are talking about, the Paralympic swimmer. It's getting some great buzz. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's Jessica Long, who's a Paralympic swimmer. She talked about her story. The ad, first of all, just has her swimming through her journey, kind of looking back where she's from. I believe she's from Russia. Her parents, Steve and Beth, adoptive parents, saw her condition. She was born without bones in her legs. And when they adopted her and brought her here to the United States, she had to have her legs amputated. I think it was 18 months. And then somehow when they put her in the water, she said she wanted to swim. She just felt like that's where she belonged. And now she's won several awards. And the whole thing here is embrace who God made you, love every part of yourself. And I think that's the message. Love who God created you to be.
Absolutely. Hey, we are out of time. Sean, thank you for your time. And to all of you who are watching News Watch, thanks so much for joining us today.